So posteriorly, this is all excess. I want to knock that off and establish my posterior angle. So I've got my medial angle here. If I know this is above my ischial level, I want this to be medial. So I want to establish my posterior wall angle just by taking the material off above my trim lines. Serves a couple purposes. Visually, it helps you modify it. And when you're pulling your check socket, you don't have to pull plastic over this large chunk of plaster. It's gone, it's out of the way, and makes your pull easier. Using a draw knife is quick. Make sure you're braced up against your mold. Don't pull it straight down because it won't work that way. Pull at an angle. All right, so in a quad socket, you have 4 walls. They're roughly like a square or actually more like a rectangle. You know, it's wide ML, narrow AP on a quad socket. The shape on a issue containment relative to the quad socket actually is more triangular in shape. If you look back at this article I emailed out to you. You can see that okay? It's upside down. That would be your quad socket shape. This is the ischio containment shape. A little more anatomically correct, but if you notice, the posterior of the socket is more almost triangulated. So the posterior is pretty short. And then the medial side and the lateral side come out at an angle. So when I'm looking at my cast, what I'm looking for is short posterior, and then that angle coming out laterally here. So that's where I was talking about taking more material off here. And then following the angle of the ramus medially. And then again, my line of progression on the wall here is lined up with my line of progression that I drew on the distal end of my cast. It's actually a little more like this. All right, so next I'm going to address that posterior lateral wall. And again, I pretty much stopped modifying anything below the seal or at the level of the seal. Again, I don't want to take off too much material. Once I'm done, I'll go back and probably do a once over and just make sure there aren't too many ripples, anything too extreme. I will modify things outside of the trim line just so that they're not in my way. And generally I'll take, as my final step, I'll go in and actually modify above the trim line so that it drops in. And then that way when I pull a check socket, or if I'm doing, say, a flexible inner liner, I can see my trim line once it's pulled. I'm just going to bring this and blend it over laterally. proximal to the trochanter, I know that unless my patient has an abduction contracture of some type, this wall above the trochanter should actually angle back inward. Right now it's a little out, but that's okay. I know that when I casted it, I really wasn't applying pressure proximally. If you put the belt around tight enough, then that should angle in. If you're, when you did the casting method with the belt around the waist. I just account for it in my modification. And I know that I'm gonna have to bring this in so that when I look at it, that proximal lateral brim will be contacting proximal to the trochanter. I won't have a gap there, and I'll increase support. I'll provide more medial lateral support. If you look at this angle, it's starting to blend in. I've got pressure along the femur, and then as it comes down distally, it starts to flare back out just slightly. He's a knee dysartic, so he really doesn't have the trimmed end of the bone. Mike, your lateral wall should come in at the waist, out at the trochanter, in along the shaft, and then there should be a slight relief for the distal end of the bone. Same with our other patient model. So I like to look at it as a profile. When I'm looking at it, I can't really look at my contour looking dead on. I need to look at my contour from the edge. So if I'm checking this edge, I'm turning it sideways and looking down the profile of the model. I'm just establishing my anterior wall. I do want to flare here, so I'm going to start bringing material in anteriorly. I look at my AP measurement, my medial AP, my original measurement. I would compare my cast measurement, ischial tuberosity, to the adductor tendon to the measurement I took on the patient. And that way I know where I want to bring this area in. So if you look at the shape of the socket, it should be narrower here than it is over here.